Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I wanted to talk about the breaking news regarding Donald Trump's easing of sanctions on Russian oil or the purchase of Russian oil in order to help stabilize the oil markets. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Donald Trump's administration has confirmed that they have lifted sanctions for, I think, something like a 30-day period on Russian oil that is sitting in tankers that has previously been sanctioned. So countries are now being allowed to purchase that oil, which the American administration is hoping will help stabilize the oil markets, which are being plunged into absolute volatility due to the Iran-US-Israel war and the blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Now, as a result of this Iran-Israel and United States war that is currently ongoing, you find a sort of blockade on the Straits of Hormuz by the Iranians. So this has now resulted in less oil and gas being able to traverse this Hormuz Strait, which then puts pressure on the global energy markets and has caused the price of oil to increase. Now, the Americans are going to be going into midterm elections in November. Trump is hoping for a resounding victory at these midterm elections. And, a war in the Middle East and that exacerbates uncontrolled gas price increases in the United States is not going to go down favorably with the United States populace, and could result in some negative fallout for the Trump administration moving into this midterm election. So, Trump, being the businessman that he is, the logical thing to do would be to get more oil into the market, which would then help stabilize the price. And, I think that this Russian deal could make a difference. Now, we know that it's only for 30 days. However, I suspect that once this Russian oil is eased into the market, and once it begins to help stabilize the market, it's going to be something that is going to continue for a period of time, or at least for the duration of the war. Because remember, Venezuela's oil needs to start being refined. Reliance have been given licenses to begin refining that Venezuelan oil, but until that doesn't start seeping into the market, not much is going to happen. So the Russian oil entering the market at this point in time is crucial to help stabilize oil prices globally. Now, as usual, much of the pushback regarding the release of sanctions on this Russian oil is coming from Europe. First and foremost, you've had the British that have come out saying that Russian intelligence and Russian assistance is seen to be the hidden hand playing against the United States by way of these attacks at the US base in Erbil by the Iranian forces. The British administration has accused Putin of having a hidden hand in this Iranian conflict and of having assisted the Iranians with drone operations against the American bases in Erbil. Now, the timing of this couldn't be more succinct, because we know Trump has been floating the idea of lifting sanctions on Russian oil. We know that the British and the EU are heavily vested in Ukraine. They know that Zelensky and his men are stealing, and they know that they are sending innocent Ukrainian men and women to their deaths, but it doesn't factor into their equation. The point is that Britain together with the EU, want to see a balkanized Russia. They want to see a defeated Russia at any cost. Now, if you recall, when the Russians launched a special military operation into Ukraine, everyone around the world with any semblance of a brain said that it was going to drive energy costs up, that the Europeans and the British were going to suffer, the people of these countries were going to suffer with high energy bills. Nevertheless, these governments doubled down and went forward into this war with the Russians. And they sold it to their people as, this is your chance to stand with humanity and stand with the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians were, were the hot thing at that moment. Coming off the back of the BLM and COVID, Ukraine was the next biggest thing, until obviously being dethroned by the Palestinian issue. However, at that point, everybody had Ukrainian flags. Everybody was so pro-Ukrainian, and all the while, Ukrainian money funneled into Ukraine was being stolen. Arms were being stolen and sold on the black market, and the Ukrainian people were suffering. And the European people were suffering. Now, bear in mind, the Americans were doing these deals with Ukraine. However, under Trump, the Americans have now exited the process, and they're still prepared to go on with selling arms and ammunition to Ukraine, provided for by the Europeans and paid for by the Europeans. So the Americans are still winning in this Ukraine debacle anyway. It's the Europeans that have been left carrying the can. Yet they still double down, knowing the pain they've put their own people through, and they still double down and insist that Ukraine has to be fought at all costs. And now they expect the same of the United States. So when Trump is now trying to find a way to stabilize oil prices for the benefit of his people and the remainder of society around the world, the Europeans still cannot see how a stabilized oil market is good for everybody. They still want to double down and let everybody feel the pain because of this conflict in Iran at the expense of Ukraine. Because releasing Russian oil from sanctions means that the Russians earn more money, which then helps them to double down in Ukraine, rather than conceding that Ukraine is a lost cause and walking away with some semblance of integrity. There's very little of it left, but walking away with some semblance of integrity attached to it, to this walking away, the Europeans are still trying to subvert any positivity that could come out of releasing this Russian oil. Because at the end of the day, the European elite, the European powers, the EU, the British government under Keir Starmer and those before him, they don't give a toss about the people. They're lining their pockets, their friends are lining their pockets, and it's all coming at the expense of the British and the European taxpayer. And they're now expecting the rest of the world to follow suit. This is why S. Jaishankar said to them, when Europe has a crisis, it's the world's crisis. And I'm paraphrasing here. But when the world has a crisis, it's got nothing to do with Europe. So we need to remove ourselves from this hubris mentality. The longer you live in this fantasy fairy tale, this Emperor's New Clothes story where, you believe that you are still that dominant force of years gone by. You could still be there if you pull your finger out of your ass and saw the writing on the wall. You could do something about it, rather than live in this fantasy land where everybody else is surpassing you. So needless to say, there's an article in, there's millions of articles going around, but I'll read out some of the article from Politico regarding Friedrich Merz, who is absolutely mortified that Donald Trump has lifted sanctions on Russian oil. Why? Because Ukraine still has to be front and center. Man, get over it. Ukraine is over. It is done with. There is nothing left in Ukraine. You are now expecting the world to fight for your pride and your ego. Get over it. You've lost. The Russians have trashed you. Walk away and let Ukraine rebuild and become something. Let the Ukrainian people for once have something that they can be proud of, rather than you having used them and abused them, and still expect the world to continue to allow you to do that. So this is what His Royal Highness Friedrich Merz had to say. In Andenes, Norway, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz criticized the Trump administration on Friday for temporarily lifting sanctions on Russian oil in an effort to bring down surging energy prices amid the US and Israeli attacks on Iran. The US temporarily lifted some of its Russia sanctions late Thursday, allowing the delivery and sale of Russian oil stranded at sea. We think that's wrong, Merz said, speaking alongside Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store. There is currently a price problem, but not a supply problem. And in that regard, I would like to know what other factors led the US government to make this decision. Merz, let me explain something to you, mate. You are a puppet in a little cog sitting in Brussels, okay? Understand your significance on the world stage. You've just come out from Schulz, who was a even bigger moron than you are, and who led his own people. You admitted it, that he led his own people into this energy problem. You are now dabbling with nuclear reactors that you all have previously shut down because you all felt that it was not in line with your green policies and green theories. You moved on to wind and solar, which really helped you so much that you then had to be importing Russian gas and oil to help stabilize your economy. You then decided to even shoot yourself in the foot further and go to war with the Russians, cutting off that energy supply while having nothing to back it up. You then went and bought this devilish, destructive energy, nuclear energy, that you had plants that were providing that electricity to you. You then went and shut it down, but went and purchased that same type of energy from France. Right? The Germans said that having this energy, having these nuclear reactors, is very dangerous. In the event of a meltdown, it has a 50-kilometer radius where it would affect people. Okay, so you've shut down all your nuclear plants. You're buying energy, nuclear energy from France, and some of those French reactors are situated 15 kilometers from some of your German cities. So explain to me, if and when there is a meltdown of these French reactors, okay, how does that radiation not then seep into your German cities that are within 15 kilometers from these reactors? Or unless you have some scientific theory, some cock and bullshit story that tells you that when that radiation reaches the German border, it decides that it cannot go any further. Listen, mate, come down from the clouds. You are now beginning to embrace nuclear energy, and you walking back policies. You and Ursula von der Leyen have gone on record saying that what Angela Merkel had set in motion by decommissioning these nuclear power plants was wrong. Okay? It was wrong. You now want to still go and tell the world that releasing sanctions on this Russian oil is wrong. Look at the bigger picture. Your people are suffering. They are going to suffer further because of this Iran war. By releasing the sanctions on this Russian oil, it gives your people some respite. Or is that not good enough? Are you that much of a sadist that you enjoy sitting back and watching your people suffer because of your stupid mentality? Wake up. You're a politician. Your people's needs should come before anybody else. And this is to Keir Starmer as well. Wake up. Pull your finger out of your ass and wake up. Go and listen to what John Kennedy, a senator in the United States Congress, had to say about you and what he thinks of the British administration, the current British administration.
When it came time for us to intervene, he said, you cannot use any United Kingdom Air Force bases or military bases. None. Zero. Nada. He specifically said you can't use Diego Garcia. Now he says you can use our bases. Thank you very much. It's a little late. We don't need you. He also is trying to give President Trump advice about how to conduct the war. Sir Keir Starmer is the last person you would want to go to. If I'm wrong, I hope the Prime Minister will respond. But if I'm right, shame on him. I want to talk about our friends in the United Kingdom, and they are our friends. I love the people of the United Kingdom. I do. I went to school there for a while. They're wonderful people. They deserve better than the government that they're being given right now. I don't mean any disrespect in saying this, but I'm not a big fan of the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Starmer. The United Kingdom was founded by geniuses, but at the moment it's being run by idiots. Now, once the war started going the way of people who believe in freedom, Prime Minister Starmer changed his mind. Now he says you can use our bases. Thank you very much. It's a little late. We don't need you. He also is trying to give President Trump advice about how to conduct the war. That's a little bit like seeking the advice of a nun about sex.
You people are sick and shameful. You have let your people down. You have sold your people down the road. At some point, your conscience should begin to affect you. Or are you so devoid of empathy that it does not matter anymore? Are you that narcissistic? Are you that psychopathic that you are unable to feel for your very own people? You can feel for the Palestinians, you can feel for the Ukrainians, you can feel for the impoverished all over the world, yet you have zero empathy for the impoverished and the poor people of your own country. The people that look and behave and share exactly the same value system as your ancestors. Are you that much of a traitor to your own people? You lot are absolutely disgusting. You should hang your head in shame because you have led your people down a path of destruction. And rather than admitting it or rather than walking back your policies, you double down. You people are absolutely sick. He further went on, we want to ensure that Russia does not exploit the war in Iran to weaken Ukraine, Merz said. Nor will we allow Moscow to test NATO on its eastern flank and up here in the north. Mate, you have nothing. Your Wehrmacht are a joke. The British Army are a joke. They have been reduced. They have been deliberately reduced to this. You know, we were once proud European countries. And thanks to you lot, you'll have decimated any sense of pride that we had in our nations. And now you want to rally those same nations to go and fight the Russians. The Russians have no sense. They have no shortage of patriotism within them. Look for patriotism within Britain. Look for patriotism within Germany. Every fabric of your society is ripping itself apart because of the division you have sown over the past 10, 15 years. Look at what Y'all have driven y'all's country and y'all's people too. Merz stressed that Germany, together with its G7 partners and Israel, was working to end the war. He also reiterated his fears that the US and Israel lack a strategy for ending the war. Yeah, does it not sound so much like y'all's policy on Ukraine? You're losing in Ukraine, but let's just pump more money into it. Let's take away whatever little is left for our own people and give it to Ukraine so that it can be stolen and thieved. And by the way, what is your end game in Ukraine? Defeating the Russians? That's not going to happen. You haven't done it in 4 years. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So how is that any different from, your ability to criticize somebody else without looking at your own faults is astounding. As a statesman, it's astounding. You shouldn't even call yourself a statesman. People like you should be locked up. You should be locked up for treason. Because crimes against your own country is tantamount to treason. In view of soaring energy prices, Merz pointed to the release of international oil reserves in recent days, including by Germany, which he said will help to moderate energy prices to some extent. It's shocking. It's shocking when you need. I would really like to have a look at where these people receive their education. Have they got any higher education? Because to be honest, you don't need a high school education. You don't need a university education to come out into the world and be an astute politician. And this is probably a case in point. These guys probably have degrees up to their eyeballs. They have PhDs and, masters and honors up to their eyeballs in any number of faculties. Yet, common sense, common human decency, they lack. Now, I know preschool kids with more sense than these morons in EU and Starmer and his lot. They're a real bunch of morons. Frankly, I think governments should come in that are strong, that are for their people, and when they do come in and they are strong and for their people, this lot should be arrested, tried for treason, and put into jail, and the keys should be thrown away for everything that they have done to their people. They should be jailed for life. Solitary confinement, no visitation rights. These people are insane. They are absolutely insane. Expecting the world to bow down on their knees because they want to continue in Ukraine. This is absurd. Really. So, for me personally, I think releasing this Russian oil onto the market, if it's going to help stabilize the market, let it get onto the market. Because the common man around the world is going to suffer. These morons that are standing here telling you like Merz and, this Norwegian Prime Minister and Keir Starmer, and they don't fill fuel in their tanks. They don't have to look at their salary at the end of the month and decide how they're going to pay their mortgage or heat their homes or feed their families. Everything's provided. It's provided by you and me. We have to go without so that these animals can have instead. And what do these animals then do? They sell you out down the line. So I'll tell anybody that is finishing school, don't get into a career in science, don't get into a career in the culinary field or anything else for that matter. Become a politician. It's the easiest way to survive, to be a scumbag, to be a spineless psychopath and still survive and live like a king. You don't need any sense of integrity. You just need to be selfish. You need to be insane. You need to be psychopathic. And you need to lack empathy. Job done. You live like a king. So I want to thank you for spending time with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share and subscribe as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.